Hello, everybody, and welcome to the January 17th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Donovan.
3 races to bring you in this week's episode, and we'll start things off with January 10th. Race number 7, a state-bred allowance optional claimer for 4-year-olds and up, going 1.70 miles.
This is just a situation where, first of all, you have a no-pace race, but you also have a horse, bigger is better, the gray, easy to see, that doesn't break that well, gets mildly steady back, and when you end up last in a paceless race, and I think one of the things to watch this race is just how so many of these riders are riding like statues on their horses. There's nothing you can do about it, Eric.
No, there really is nothing you can do. You can't be in really any different position than this. And, you know, we've been fairly critical of the rider Eddie Castro, on this show the last few months or so. But really, in this case, there's nothing he could do here. I mean, he can't move the horse up. He'll be expending energy unnecessarily going wide. And he's in the right spot right now. He's just up against it. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't blame Eddie at all, because if he makes that middle move, he ends up looking foolish, and he probably doesn't even get the third that he gets here. He salvaged the best he could have out of a rough situation. It's also the problem when you have a horse like Bigger is Better, who has no speed, and it's one of the reasons that horses with at least tactical speed get so rewarded, especially at 2 turns on the inner.
It's also one of the reasons why Bigger is Better is now 2 for 21 lifetime, a horse with obviously some talent here, but so dependent on how the race unfolds.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Eric. Right. I mean, he's way too good a horse to be 2 for 21, and it's not. I don't know what you can do to make it different, and I'm not saying there's nobody to blame here, but he's a decent horse, and it's not like he needs them to go 23-46 the half, but he gets in a competitive race with good position. But I mean, you see the situation. The horse who ends up winning the race is the horse who's sitting inside with Ramon. Eddie's forced to, he saves all the ground he can. He sits in the 2-path. He moves out late in the turn. He does everything right here. But you've got the horse who's second is on the rail in the lead. The horse who ends up winning is on the rail, sitting right behind him. These horses get the perfect kind of trips, a moderate pace, and Bigger is Better finishes a distant third. But he is not necessarily really worse than the first 2 finishers.
No, it's just his lack of speed puts him, behind the 8 ball. And, in races where there's a controlled pace, smallish type of field going around 2 turns, he's really, at the mercy of the tactics of the race.
Yeah, I'd love to see him get in a race. It's just not, once again, yeah, we would like to see him get in a race where there's a 4-horse speed duel, but if he can just get in a more fairly run race, Bigger is Better is in decent form, and he's going to run a lot better. I'd love to see him in a situation against Reed the Byline, who finished second in this race, where Reed the Byline draws post 6 instead of the rail, where there's another speed inside of him, another sort of moderate type speed, so you get a fairly run race, because I would easily take my chance. He's a better horse than Reed the Byline, at least in my opinion.
I think so, too. Second race we'll take a look at now on this episode of Trips and Traps is the 5th race from January 12th, a 12-5 claimer, 2 lifetime.
Now, Hope Still Springs is first time in a tag. This is number 2. The first thing is that Hope Still Springs doesn't get left today, so it's a good situation. Now, I think his rider, K. Barcoa, has really shown some promise riding here. He's an apprentice that has a good career ahead of him. I really think so. But one of the things about being an apprentice is you make mistakes and you learn from your mistakes. I think this is a situation where if he had to do over again, I think he would have ridden him a little bit differently. He's got good position here on the rail. He's sitting back in 6th, but for whatever reason, he decides to make this wide mid-move that just turns out to be a disaster. And it's a good comparison to Bigger is Better in a funny way.
It is, because, you might think the pace is going a little bit too slow in here. And this is something that he'll probably get better at, K. Barcoa, with more race riding, with more experience, to be able to sense these paces a little bit better. Perhaps he thought his pace was slower than it was and decided to move him on up there, when in fact they were going 23 and 3, 47 and 3 for these type of horses. That's pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, he could have moved outside of the 1 and now been actually in the position where the 1 is between horses and kept the 1 back there. Instead, he's rushing up wide, and then he continues to rush up, and he kind of leaves the 1 in his dust here. And I'm not sure he would have beaten the 9. The 9 might have won this race anyway. The 9 actually ran very well involved with the pace, but I really do think he would have been no worse than second here if he had given him more pace ride, because he would have been more in position where the 1 was, and he would have had the 1 in his pocket instead of out there in no man's land.
Oh, he absolutely would have been second here. He gets beat a length and a nose for second. You see him there on the outside, and just that middle move and giving up all that ground with that wide move as well. That's easily worth 2 or 3 lengths in my book, which would have made him a clear second in this spot.
Yeah, and once again, we're not trying to be too hard on the rider, because he's a young rider who is getting better and learning. But you watch these these races, you want to look back on them and say, what could I have done differently to change the result? And I think in this case, a more of a patient ride and staying towards the inside, he could have kept that one hemmed in the pocket and gotten no worse than second and been much closer to the winner, though in all likelihood not beating him. Hope Still Springs, in my opinion, beats this field next time they meet.
I think you're probably right. A horse that had been campaigned mostly on turf for trainer Bruce Brown. Now with the racing on the inner track, he's forced to run on the dirt.
And he's dropped down to the lowest level, and you know what? He's running where he belongs.
One more race to bring you. We'll take a look at the 9th race from January 12th, maiden special weight for New York Breds. Going 1 mile and 70 yards for 3-year-olds. We're going to take a look at Wise Guide, a second-time starter for John Kimmel.
Wise Guide is now 2 for 2 on trips and traps, and frankly, he's a horse that we showed last time. 2 of the horses out of that race actually, I think, are running on Thursday's card, today's card. He's a horse who had a wide trip in his debut, and he probably ran the best race of anybody in here.
Yeah, this is a shame because, I mean, I think there were some people looking to bet him back off his debut on December 26th. That giant inside track with this horse was outside most of the way and, didn't do a whole lot of running in there, and then he ends up in this spot.
Well, he also is trying to at least tuck him in here, which I can't blame the rider. For whatever reason, the rider of the 6th horse decides to force him out into the turn, which hurts him even more. Then he gets caught up between horses here in a tough spot. He's steadying a little bit, and then for whatever reason, his rider, Pablo Morales, decides, I'm going to send him wide in the backstretch. Once again, showing why that's a poor move.
Yeah, you'll see it here. I mean, he would have been okay actually in this spot here if he just took a hold, I think, and settled him down a little bit. Instead, he goes forward with him into a into a moderate to quick pace for this type of horse. And really, I thought the horse ran his race here on the backstretch.
He's also outside of the eventual winner, and you see the eventual winner with Jose Ortiz giving him a perfect ride where he's staying inside. He's somewhat patient. He's getting his position, but instead, you see the 7th horse, Wise Guy. Well, he's going to make that premature 4-wide move and force him on the turn, leaving the winner in his dust, but that horse is saving ground. But now the pace is quickening, and the argument could be made that in a way, Wise Guy is collapsing the race, and he's forcing the horse in the front end to have to go faster. As he pushes him there, the 2 waits back patiently here. Things set up very well for him. Wise Guy, he runs well in this race. He's okay.
He is okay, and he gets beat about 5 lengths in this spot here, just about. And, a horse that I think we'll have to bet him back again next time.
I mean, you look at the race, and arguably, he ran hard every step of the way. He doesn't break quite that sharply. He's trying to rate him back there, but once they get the turn, that horse pushes him out. They hit in the middle of the turn. He's running hard the whole way into the stretch, and he never really gives up. It was 14 lengths back to the 4th-place finisher. Now, there are no superstars behind them, and these horses are not, going to win any big stake race in the future, but in this kind of company, he gets a good trip in a fair spot. I think he's going to beat these horses, and Wise Guy's a horse that's going to win his maiden race soon, and maybe even more than that.
Yeah, you should have won this race.
He really should have won this race. Anyway, 3 races this week. We can always use your help. We got a 6 race day week coming up. Trips and traps at NYRing.com.
That's a mouthful. Thanks for watching.